Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome everybody to Morris Talk Live 100. I am your host, Tarhaka Bay, and tonight we're going to be dealing with the importance of creating your own college curriculum. Now, let me give you a breakdown on what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is creating your own educational system right where you are. If you are in the United States of America, as far as education is concerned, you have been victimized. And we'll explain how, who, what, when, and why that happened to you. So what we want to do tonight is bring out the importance of creating your own college curriculum of knowledge of self. Now you got children, and if you have children, or if you have grandchildren, there need to be something in your environment that they can get a hold to and learn something about themselves. You can tell them as best you can, but the material that you leave in your environment goes into greater detail than you ever could. So if you're going to make an investment in something, what I recommend is that you make an investment in materials that you can have available to them that will be there when you leave this planet, and they are able to hold you. They don't have to depend on nobody for a scholarship. They will go out into the world with something in their head that not only do they know, but they prove because they have the resources. Now, we have a major problem inside the United States, and on our previous broadcast, my special guest was Dr. Walter Williams, and he had his position, I had my position. Ain't mad with him about it. It's all right, but we still have to move forward. My position is I'm not an African. I did not come here on a slave ship. I'm not here as a result of the people in Spain requesting that the Africans come into Spain and civilize somebody, and later on came from there and put us on this land, and all of a sudden we're on this land. My position is that we've always been here. As far as a record of us being anywhere on the planet, no such record exists. It simply does not exist. We've always been here in the Americas, by the way, and since time immortal. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to provide some information for you for food of thought. I have a list of books that I would like you to take a look at, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the first two books, and later on, we get on in the broadcast, I'll be gradually putting this information out, and I hope you got paper and pencil. You can write this stuff down and look at it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Investigate it for yourself. I think this is fair. I think I am, at this point, doing the world a great service. I'm not here to tell you to do this, to do that, and to do the other. What I'm telling you is I'm going to put the plate in front of you. It's up to you to eat or not eat. It's totally left up to you. You were born with a brain. I was too. You have your own mind, whatever that is, your own body, your own soul, and all of this stuff. So the first book that I would like to recommend is In the Land of Cave and Cliff Dwellers by Lieutenant Frederick Schwartz. The second book is Historia del Descubrimiento y Conquista de America. First book was printed in 1800, the second in 1835. Now, what has transpired is we have in the United States of America commonly referred to as manifest destiny. What that means is that the people that came to this country from somewhere else after the murders and the violence and the killings and the robberies and all of this stuff decided that what we're going to do is we are going to create our own destiny. Now, in order for that to work, the first thing they're going to have to do is set up a point in time in history when they're going to begin to do that. The time period that they have decided on was 1492. Christopher Columbus came to America, and then the slave trade started. Now, at this point, what they are able to do is say that anything that predates our starting point is to be destroyed, held down, locked up, burnt up, put into prison, and anybody that insists on bringing out the truth will be destroyed and cut off. Now, the authors of the books and stuff that I will be reading to you are people who brought this information out, and they were pretty much ostracized because it was first of all, they received funding from the United States corporations. Now, we already dealt with the fact that the United States is a conglomerate of corporations. However, the funds that we give you is good, provided you follow the script. If I say this happened 13,000 years ago, and then you go do the research and an investigation in archaeology, and it doesn't match what I'm saying, and you come back and say, well, wait a minute, we find that this is 20,000 years ago. Okay, what we're going to do with you as leaders of the manifest destiny, we're going to have to cut you off. We're going to have to withdraw the funding, and if you insist you keep it up, we're going to kill you. Okay? This is what has been going on inside the United States. So now we have people in this country that's been labeled as Native Americans that came here X amount of thousand years ago. Then we have other people that came here from all over the world. All of them are good, or they are following the script. However, what is being omitted is you, the one that's classified as Negro, colored, black, African American, Negro, and all this right here, who predates all of these people. You follow me? This is part of the problem. We're gonna get down into this thing tonight, and we're gonna open it up. What I want you to um, write down. Also, will I get to that? I got it here. Let me go back one page. Just hold on a minute. Well, no, two. Okay. All right, I got you. What I want you to do is I want you to pay close attention to the plugs that I'm going to read for you, and I want you to look up the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. The initials is NHPA. The next thing I want you to look up is the Bureau of Indian Affairs, 1824. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, 1824. Okay? Now keep in mind, right now to this day, we have whole cities are being unearthed in Guatemala, in the Guatemalan jungle. Whole metropolises. But this is no longer, is not being broadcast to anyone inside the United States. And this is near the Yucatan Peninsula, but you don't hear anything about that. But nevertheless, let's get on down into the broadcast. I'm going to go ahead and run the commercial, and we'll come back, then we're going in. Y'all hold on. The greatest move you can make beginning in 2022 is to move out of the public and into the private. That's how you get rid of student loans, child support, mortgages, foreclosures, and all this kind of business. Go to TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Fill out my Contact Us form by leaving your email address, and I'll rush my free report straight to your email box. Our economy is in shambles today for people who insist on living in the public. Move into the private. Make an easy transaction. Go to www.TarhakaDebtElimination.org. That's TarhakaDebtElimination.org. Fill out the Contact Us form, and I'll rush you my free report. All right, now, this is what we have to remember. When you start petitioning the United States corporations for reparations for black folks or African Americans in the United States, the first thing you have to remember is there's no such thing as black folks or African Americans. Those are labels that's put on people. And the second thing is they would never allow you to wake up. They have invested hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars to keep you asleep while everybody around you is being blessed, because this is your land, and they know that. They got all the original records that they didn't destroy and burn a long time ago. All of the artifacts, places like the Smithsonian Institute and other places where they have this information stored, and it's been stored there for years and years and years, long as the status quo is concerned. What is taking place as a result of them doing what they have done and cutting you off from your original language, cutting you off from your original knowledge of self, cutting you off from your ancient story they have designated you as a permanent underclass to be the slaves of the world. In other words, the so-called plantations has gone all over the world. A person can come from Africa and try to go into a community or go into an exclusive restaurant or hotel or whatever, and they were like, oh, no, you can't go. And then all they have to say, well, look, I'm Nigerian. I'm from Nairobi. I'm from Zimbabwe. Oh, okay, you're not a Negro. You can come on in. In other words, you're not what we have designated and kept off the record and classified. And we're going to deal with that tonight and show you how they did that and where it is so you can see it for yourself. And this is part of what is going on. See, you're not losing your mind. What they have done is you have somebody who deliberately and continue to deliberately maintain the stranglehold on your identity, and part of your identity is that this is your property. This is your land. You didn't come from somewhere. You have always been here. You always been in Brazil. You've always been in a place they call Mexico. You've always been in California. You have always been in Colorado. You have always been in Florida. You have always been in South America. Always. In other places all around the world. But in this spot, we're calling the United States of America, we're going to maintain slavery against a particular group of people, and these are the people they call the Negro. Hold on a minute. As a secured party and creditor, can you buy a home, a car, and other items you need and want? The answer is yes, and there are documents you use to do just that. Catch my radio podcast at Blog Talk Radio. Go to tarhaka.elimination.org. Fill out the box with your email address that say join our mailing list, and I will send you my free report. You got credit problems? Contact me at tarhaka.elimination.org. Let's stay in honor and get into the private. Okay, we're back. Now, what I want to tell you is that there are records inside the United States of America in some of the highest places of the land that are active. They're hot, they're red hot, and they're sitting there. You know, you can walk into a cold environment and there can be a heater in that environment, and you know, out of all the space in that environment, you know where it's at, because it's hot. Well, what we're going to do right now is we're going to deal with what is taking place and what is in place against you, and how they are classifying and doing what they're doing, and then we're going to get on down into the rest of the broadcast. So I need you to hold a minute. We'll be right back. Pay attention now.
Welcome to Real Black Consciousness Forum Podcast. This is Big BJ checking in. Today's conversation, we just going to talk about technology, right? We're going to have a good time, beloved. We're going to talk about history. We're going to talk about technology, though. You know what I mean? Because, man, I be looking in the comments and I say, you know, these folks, man, they trip our people up. The words, man, that they use, man, the devil. This is a slick guy, man. The devil is a slick guy. You know what I mean? These are slick people, beloved. But we're going to have a conversation. We're going to clear some things up. How about that, right? So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about Native American tribes, right? We're going to talk about American Indian tribes. We're going to talk about First Americans, and we're going to talk about Aboriginal Americans, right? And, we're going to talk about these groups, and we're going to go back, and we're going to do some research, and we're going to figure out how come so many of these tribes are federally recognized, right? And then how many of these other tribes are not federally recognized. And then we're going to say, well, what's the difference between the two, right? Because, beloved, I encourage my people, right? Black folks, the American Negro, out the village, out the camp, out the black community. You want to find yourself, beloved, you got to begin to study these federal tribes that are not recognized. That's the Native American tribes you got to start researching, the ones that are not federally or state recognized, right? And then, once you start doing that, beloved, you'll find yourself and you'll find your people. Because we're going to go over the technology of the enemy, and he play word games with our people, right? So we just going to, we're going to do this, right? How about this? All right, I'm going to give you guys a name or a couple of agencies I want you just to look up. I just want you to look up. I want you to research. And then we're going to talk about terminology, right? How about that, right? Okay, so I want you guys to look up this. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, right? Because they have a guide, and we're going to use that guide for today's conversation, right? The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, that's coming out of LBJ's program, right? NHPA. And then I want you guys to take a look at the Bureau of Indian Affairs from 1824, right? And I want you to take a look at both of them. The terminology that we're going to use today is the term Indian tribe, right? What does that mean, right? What is the good working definition of that term? We're going to say later what it really means, but we're just going to use the legal definition of that term. When the United States government says Indian tribe, what do they mean? And then we're going to have that conversation, right? It should be understood at the outset that the term, quote unquote, Indian tribe is defined in the NHPA as an Indian tribe, band, nation, or other organized group or community, including a native village, regional corporation, or village corporation that is recognized as eligible for special programs and services by the United States to Indians because of their status as an Indian, right? All right, so that is the legal working definition of Indian tribe, okay? Therefore, the term Indian tribe refers to a federally recognized Indian tribes, plural. The federal government has a unique political and legal relationship with Indian tribes not shared by non-federally recognized tribes. The federal government has a trust responsibility to Indian tribes that it does not have with non-federally recognized tribes. And the federal government works with Indian tribes on a nation-to-nation basis, but does not do so with any other indigenous groups, including NHOs, right? So we're going to skip down because we're reading off the guide. We're going to skip down to the last sentence in the next paragraph. And it says, many Indian tribes have strong and long-standing relationships as well as kinship ties with non-federally recognized tribes and recognize them as tribes. All right, let's stop. I want you guys to put a pen on it. You know what I'm talking about? Take that highlighter. Go ahead and hit it with that highlighter, right? Okay, now we kind of got what is a federally recognized tribe, the working definition out of the way, right? So now we're going to touch in, or we're going to tap into what is a non-federally recognized tribe. We're going to read that working definition, and then we're going to see the difference between the two, right? But I'm going to tell you about black folks before we get even further. I'm going to tell you about I'm going to tell you about our people. I'm going to tell you about the brown man. I'm going to tell you about the red man. And I'm going to tell you about the devil. And I'm going to show you how technology works, right? Beloved, my people, black folks, you can trip us up with words. You know what I mean? And what the devil does when he talks to us, he trips us up with words. He will replace a common word with a different word to trip us up. Because he knows if he just speaks up in a common tone, we can see the game. He just switched words around. He playing semantics. It's the same thing, but we get confused off the words. So that's why I come on Real Black Consciousness Forum podcast. I talk about people groups. I don't say race. I don't use the term race that much. Oh, the white race, the red race, you know what I mean? The brown race, the black race. I don't use the term race so much because my folks, my people, they don't identify with the word race. Black folks don't get the word race. So what I do is I replace the word race with family, because we understand if I say the black family. Because now we can look in the mirror and see the black family. We look in the mirror, we don't see a black race. We look right at our household and we can see the black family. You know what I mean? The word tribe, I've watched us. I've watched our people. The word tribe, it throws us off. We don't really get it. That word tribe is like, it's because, what tribe did you come from? Our people be sitting there like goddamn CJ, I don't know my tribe. This is why, right? Check this check this out, beloved. We're just gonna talk, right? Check this out. This is why the devil can be amongst our people, and he'll point at a map and say, look, your people come from over here. You belong to an African tribe, right? And then here you is, your black ass from Memphis, some goddamn New Orleans, Detroit, you know what I'm saying, Little Rock, St. Louis, somewhere, and you just looking at that map. And then you trying to see if you fit into an African tribe, right? You know what I'm saying? And then you come and then, you start searching and you find yourself on Real Black Consciousness Forum podcast. And then you already been around the devil. So when you come on this podcast, you start making comments. You start talking about, no, brother, our tribes come from Africa. Our tribes come from Africa. And I'm like, bro, tribe just means family. And I know, your black ass is from Memphis. So I'm like, how did you, you from Atlanta, bro. How are you a part, or, point out to me your African family. I changed the word on you. And then you start to, well, I don't have no family in Africa. Because I know you don't know that family and tribe means the same thing. You see what I mean? They play word games on us. They have always played word games on us. Because these guys, the devil, he like to play big shot. You and I, beloved, since we was no taller than a grasshopper. You know what I mean? We babies. We kids. We youth in the neighborhood. You know what we did to make money? We cut grass. We just cut grass. We took our lawnmowers, we went door to door, and we cut grass. You know what the devil called that? He said that was landscaping. So we try to go get certain jobs. He say, man, y'all got some landscaping experience? We like, nah, we ain't never did no landscape. We looking clueless. We don't know. It's the one that's among us with knowledge. You say, no, we do that every day, beloved. That's what, when we cutting grass, he's just using a different word to trip you up. You can go to a job. You're a young teenager. You don't know no better. And the devil will ask our babies, do you guys have a customer service experience? He talking to our babies now. And our babies, they scratching their head. We don't know nothing about no customer service. We never did no customer service. But it takes the person with knowledge to come back and say, listen, beloved, damn near everything that you do in life, beloved, in this country is damn near customer service. If you watch somebody car before, that's customer service. If you stood on the corner and sold weed, that's customer service. If you just, everything is customer service. But see, the way that this guy play with these words, he trips our people up. Our people outwatch us. We are tripped up over the word tribe. We're tripped up over the word tribe. Your family reunion is your tribal reunion. It's the same thing, but because we watching this guy's idiot box and we in his schools and we reading his books, every time he show us a quote-unquote tribe, is some people looking primitive, jumping around, dancing around, and you know what I mean? And we just we got that image in our mind, so when he asks us what is our tribe, we act like we don't know. But maybe that's a different story for a different day. How about that, right? I'm just talking about, so what I wanted to do is, I wanted to give you guys the first definition of a federally recognized tribe, and I wanted to use the tribe throughout the whole thing. And you know what I'm thinking to myself? Man, a lot of our people, they didn't get that first part. Y'all ain't gonna get it. Because you know what? I was using tribe. Now, I'm going to read the second part. I'm going to talk about what is a non-federally recognized tribe, but I'm not going to use the word tribe. I'm going to use the word non-federally recognized family. And watch how you catch the second half, and you probably didn't catch the first half. Now watch how you, because it's going to be different when I use the word family. I'm connecting with my people, right? The term that we're looking for is family. When you hear tribe, I don't care if it's on my podcast or somebody else's podcast, I need you as my people to change that word in your mind to clan or kinfolks or family when you hear tribe. That way you give an answer. What tribe you belong to? You a Johnson. You belong to the Johnson tribe. We got a brother from Philadelphia belong to the Johnson tribe, right? And he called himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism. He ain't got one family. He ain't got no tribal members. They're tripping our people up with the word tribe. I'm watching them. You may not know the original name of your tribe, beloved. That's why you're a Jackson now. That's why you're a Simpson now, right? That's why you're a Washington now. You didn't forget your tribe. You know who your big mama is, right? Your big mama know who her big mama is, right? You know who your aunties and uncles, you didn't forget your tribe. The original name for your tribe may be gone. And you're going to forget that anyway, beloved, because you speak English. You know what I mean? And these, as much as they want you to think, everything doesn't convert over when you go from one language to another. It doesn't, beloved. And then when I start to touch on your last names, because we're going to really have to have that conversation eventually. Names that you think come from Europe, beloved, it's going to blow your mind when I show you that a lot of these names, they don't come from Europe. Many of these names is already here on this land. But it's the word tribe that's throwing our people off. All right, so when we just kind of, because I'm going to read a little more, I want you to, when you start hearing me say tribe, black folks, I'm talking to you because I know you my people. I know what's tripping you up. When you start hearing me say the word tribe, I don't want you to think they got you thinking about Mandingos and somebody, some weird Ashanti and Cherokee and all these names. I don't want you to think of no names. When you hear tribe, I want you to think about your family. Replace the word tribe with family, all right? Because we're going to go into a working definition of what is a non-recognizable tribe. And we're going to read off the guide. Let me go over to it, right? I'm going to pull it up and put it on the screen so we all can see it and just kick back and chill, right? There's a portion that's going to say why some tribes are not federally recognized. All right, so what the devil is saying in his manuscripts is why some families are not federally recognized. That's the conversion I want you to make. When you hear the word tribe, I want you to think clan. I want you to think kinfolks. I want you to think family. And the devil is telling you why some Native American families are not federally recognized. All right, how about that? It says, in at least 14 states, tribal entities are recognized at the state level as having self-government authority outside the federal process. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, blah, blah, blah. It's just a bunch of states. We're going to skip down a little bit. It is important to note that unlike the limited number of pathways to federal recognition, states have their own unique process for recognizing tribes, or states have their own unique process of recognizing families. The United States Government Accountability Office has identified approximately 400 non-federally recognized tribal entities in the United States. Let's read it again. The United States Accountability Office have identified approximately 400 non-federally recognized families in the United States. Some non-federally recognized families lost their recognition as a result of federal government actions in the 1950s and 60s that terminated government-to-government relationships with Indian families, making them now ineligible to apply to the Bureau of Indian Affairs for recognition. All right, let's stop. You know how to change that word around a little bit, right? Believe it or not, if I left the word tribe in there, I would have confused a lot of folks. But watch this, though. The devil already told you why your tribe is not federally recognized. He said you lost your recognition as a result of what? His actions as a government, and when? In the 50s and 60s. Did you catch that? He just jumped up and said in the 50s, not even 100 years ago, he just said your family doesn't count. Your family ties to this land does not count. That's all it has to do with. It has nothing to do with your genealogy. It has nothing to do who your family is. It has nothing to do where you're from. It is, I'm the devil and I said so. That's it. So now, the federally recognized tribes are families that he decided to deal with, and the non-federally recognized families are the families he do not want to deal with. It's just as simple as that. These are the families he's going to do business with. He's going to get them benefits and give them a card, and these are the families he decided not to deal with. It doesn't mean that any family is less than anybody else. He's playing tricknology. That's the art of tricknology. He put it in his own, he just wrote it down. He just, hey man, we came in the 50s and 60s, that's just it. All right, if we skip down, he gives examples in the same document, beloved. I'm going to give you the link. I'm going to give it to you. In the same document, he's going to give his reasons why, or examples why he say, well, some of these are non-federally recognized families, right? This is why these families are not recognized. And then he's going to give example 1, 2, 3. He's going to go down to like example 5, right? Now, I'm going to let you in on the trick, what he's doing. He plays a color game in the examples. If they were too dark, they lost their federal and state recognition as being a true indeed Native American family. Now, let's talk reality. Beloved, I will not have my people be ignorant. There's no way, it doesn't even, the concept doesn't make sense. There's no way you can lose a family status or identity because it's too much quote-unquote mixing in. That, beloved, is a process called tricknology. So let me give you an example, right? I'm going to show you how the devil play this game. He gives you 2 continents, right? You got the American continent, and then you got the African continent, right? All right, now I'm going to show you, I'm going to play a tribal game. This is the word tribe. But I want you to remember, when we hear that word on this podcast, we change that word out for family. Okay. There will never be enough Cherokees, beloved. I don't care how you how you imagine the Cherokee tribe or the Cherokee family in your mind. I don't care how you envision them. There would never be enough Cherokees or Choctaws or Chickasaws or Seminoles that can go across the Atlantic Ocean, right, and mix in with the Ashantis, so much so to the level that the Nigerian government would no longer recognize the Ashantis as a tribe anymore or recognize the Ashantis as a family anymore. It'll never happen. In the same breath, through history, he'd tell you and I, right, in the same breath, that he put a bunch of Ashantis on the boat and a bunch of Igbos on the boat and a bunch of Mandingos on the boat. You know what I'm saying? And he brought them over as a minority group. You know what I mean? He brought them over as a minority group, and when they got off the boat, they started to mix in with the certain Native American tribes or Native American families. And they mixed in so much that they lost their tribal status. That doesn't even make sense. How can a family of people mix in with another family of people so that other family become non-recognizable? He only played that game with us. He only played that game in America. It only works in America. So now, our people, right, what we do, this is what happens subconsciously. What we do is, because we don't belong to a federal recognized family or a state recognized family, we throw away our whole identity of who we are as a people, and then we try to pick up an identity from somewhere across the Atlantic. How could you tell me that you got African? Listen, a brother from America would tell you, a black man now, American Negro, he'd tell you he belonged to an African tribe. When niggas say that, I know they're confused with the word tribe. Tribe don't mean nothing but kinfolks. Tribe don't mean nothing but family. You got an African family? Nigga, you from Philadelphia. How do you have an African family? Who was your African family over there? He started picking up Mendingos and Mendinga. He started getting all this stuff. Some old small head told him in the book. He didn't watch it on the movie. Brother, you ain't, all your family, your tribes is here. I watch you every goddamn year run down south to the Carolina somewhere, to Georgia somewhere, Bama, Mississippi, Louisiana. All your tribal reunions or your family reunions is in this land. Yeah, the devil, he switched up the names to some, not to all. So now you may not know your original tongue. You may not know your original language, but you're still part of your tribe business. You just call yourself Davis now. You got this, you part of the Smith tribe, the Johnson tribe, the Carter tribe. It's he's playing word games with you. That's why it's a certain way I have to talk to my, Mr. Muhammad said, our people need straight talk. We don't get it. If I came on here another way, our people don't get it. And I'm like, beloved, you want to find out who you is, all you got to do is start to study the tribe that does not have any recognition from the federal government, because 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to find out. That's who your big mama belonged to. They became too dark, or they was already too dark, and he started playing the color game, and nah, man, we can't be so naive to think that the devil came to this landmass we call the United States, and every single person looked the same way. There were certain Native Americans that had that straight hair, their high cheekbones, you know what I'm saying, their button nose, and then there was others that had the curly hair, with the wide nose, with the big lips. And when explorers got here, they said, man, damn, these folks look like Africans. And then all of a sudden, the ones that look like Africans just disappeared all of a sudden. And then we got one phenotype left in the whole continent? Maybe that's a different story for a different day. Let me go to this guy. I want to talk about some examples, and then we just going to kick it. You know what I'm saying? Because it just, we just talking about technology. You know what I mean? When you look at the list, right, and we still on the guide, there's a list of federally or non-federally recognized tribes, right? The name of one of them is called the Wanapum tribe, and they're from Washington. And the reason why they're not federally recognized as a tribe, or I should say it, they're not a federally recognized American Indian family, is because they just decided not to deal with the federal government. It's just as simple as that. We ain't going to deal with the government. We cool. Now, I'm going to show you how this works, right? The Wanapum tribe is from Washington. You know what I mean? And then this group may have a migration pattern where they bust up out of there and they go to Arizona, or they move to New Mexico. They move to Texas. They marry a local. The local have children, and then the children have children. And then you know what we be calling the grandkids? The grandkids say, well, I'm Hispanic now. Their whole identity is gone. See, this game that this devil playing, it just doesn't work for, it's not like it's not just tailor-made for our people. He's playing this game with their people too. You know what I mean? Because, see, when you go through the examples, there's tribes that he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? The Nipmuc Nation out of Massachusetts, that's a tribe. Then at another example, he's talking about the Narragansett tribe. That's another, that's another family, right? Then he talk about the Pamunkey tribe. That's another tribe. That's another family, right? We know the Pamunkey, that's Chris Brown. That's the tribe that Chris Brown belongs to, the singer, the R&B singer that do all the dancing and all that. Okay, but dig. What you begin to notice is that a lot of these tribes, these families don't have any federal recognition. But if you took that tribe and you split them down the middle, half of them is going to be able to be called, or maybe call themselves, I should say, Hispanic. The other half is eventually going to call themselves African American. And the reason why they don't have any federal recognition as a tribe or as a family, there's no particular reason. The devil just jumped up in the 1950s and 60s and said, hey, we did something we decided to do. We didn't want to do business with all these families. This is all we decided to do. And then everybody else, we're left to pick up the pieces. And instead of us just being and loving the family that we have, we were sold a whole new family we know nothing about. Ain't it interesting that the United States government says, they decided to part ways and not even recognize so many of these Native American tribes or Native American families in the 50s and 60s? What was going on in the 50s and 60s in this country? I don't know. I may have forgot. You just fill me in. What was going on in this country? Civil rights movement, folks marching, folks protesting. But you know what? A new identity for my people has been ushered in. You won't catch none of us talking about we African back in the 50s. It didn't happen. Before the 50s and 60s, it never happened. And then we got some of these civil rights leaders. They got with these small hats. They got a bag. And then they came on out and they advertised a new word amongst us. And we start seeing African American studies pop up at the school all of a sudden. And everything became African. And now we got our people today, they're looking for their African tribe right now today. They've been digging the whole time. They've been looking for their roots. They're digging. They keep digging, trying to find their roots, and they're looking for that ship. And I be telling them, I be tapping them on the shoulder. I say, shit, when you find that ship, you let me know. Because you sure digging for that ship. The devil told you it was the ship that brought you. All right. Well, you keep looking. And when you find it out, you keep, because they play another game. And man, the slave trade is one of the most well-documented things that happened in United States history. And I say that's interesting, you know what I'm saying, because we know 4 devils was involved in the slave trade. We know the Portuguese devil was involved, Spanish devil, French devil, English devil, right? So you got 4 different devils, so that means you should have 4 different languages. So there should be a lot of goddamn documentation all over the place, right? And we see a lot of documentation, and we see a lot of stories. But you know what's interesting? When it's time to find our family on that ship, nobody can find it. We can find everybody else's paperwork now. We've been reading books for the last 30, 40 years. And we can find every kind of piece of paperwork about this ship and that ship, but when it's time to find your family off that ship, you can't find them. Maybe that's a different story for a different day. Man, these folk playing games, beloved. These folks playing games, man. They playing a word game. They telling you straight up, man, these are federally recognized families we're going to rock with. The rest of them, y'all on your own. We ain't going to even rock with y'all. I got a Brown brother, right? One of my Brown brothers, he got a little joke. He say, because he's Mexican, right? He's so-called Mexican. He said, he said, we didn't cross the border. He said, the border crossed us. Born and raised in Texas. His folks ain't come from nowhere. They ain't come from nowhere. His family been here just as whatever the criteria it can take to be a Indian or a federally recognized family. Man, my partner family, he can make the cut. All his generations, they all from Texas. Why he's not federally recognized? The devil just said no. It's no big. They just said no. He's indigenous to this land, but he doesn't call himself Indian. He doesn't call himself Aboriginal. He calls himself Hispanic now. He calls himself Hispanic. But you know what? We underneath the same oppressor. We in the same trick bag because our people been here for generations upon generations upon generations, and we think we African. How about that, man? But one of these days, beloved, our people gonna have to wake up and see they family, they clan, they kindred, and they tribe that they belong to is from here and always been from here. And this territory that we call the United States is the Black Americans' ancestral homeland. That means he can't find nobody out of his line, above ground or under the ground. They all from here. And until he figured that out and she figured that out, that man gonna keep playing that trick in Washington. Peace and black power to your family. Thank you guys so much for listening, man. Thank you guys for hanging out, man. Real Black Content is Foreign Podcast, man. Big VJ. I'll get it with you guys later. Peace.
All right, everybody, we're back. Keep in mind, the title of the broadcast is The Importance of Creating Your Own College Curriculum. Let me give you a case in point before we move forward. I was fortunate enough to know a young lady, and her son had her first grandbaby. And what I did is took the liberty of examining, because see, all my children are grown, but I took the liberty of examining what was going on among little children, because I know they watch TV, they all in the cell phones, this kind of stuff. And I just took the time to look at what they be looking at, the babies. And what I found was very, very disturbing. And I said, oh, no. You got all this action, you got violence, and then you got all of these little creatures that is not recognized no kind of way in human society. I mean, it was so crazy, and I said, no, 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 no. I said, what I'm finna do is go over and find humanity, find something for children that she can identify with, because that is something that she see every day. We ain't finna throw this baby on the curb. And so what we did was we found uh, some cartoons. We found just virtually little cartoons. They had them little music in and stuff, and worked on her a while. We dealt with the nutrition, all of that involving the family. And I'm proud to announce that she be, I think she'll be 2 years old in March. I got to go back and check. But she sharp as a whip. She know her ABCs. She know how to count. She is sharp. But the spinoff from that is actually, well, I'm busy educating her, and I got a pretty good head on my shoulders, but I think I need to go ahead and go a little bit further on what I need to know. And as a result, I was able to create a curriculum stuff I've been meaning to get around to, and I was able to create it, and I put it in a position where if the internet collapses, I'm still able to keep the educational stuff going. If the computers go down, I'm still able to keep it going. I created it and put it on, and it's still in the stages of creation, but the curriculum has already been created. Now, if you love your family, and you love your wife, and I know you do, and you love your children and your grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren, why don't you make investment so that they can have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And I tell people all the time, it's not enough for you to have facts. How much truth are attached to the facts that you have? So I just wanted to throw it out there before I go to the next club, because we haven't heard from my brother Muhammad Ali. He's gone now, but let's pay attention to see what he said involved this, and then after that we'll go to the actor Morgan Freeman. Then we'll come back and I'm gonna read these books just like I said I would. But hold on a minute.
Time in 1958, we couldn't eat in the restaurants in Louisville. We couldn't eat downtown. One day I saw two Africans go in with their robes and their turbans. They couldn't speak English. I heard the man say, "Let them in, they're not Negroes."
You heard that? Now, for clarity purposes, let's play it again.
One day I saw two Africans go in with their robes and their turbans. They couldn't speak English. I heard the man say, "Let them in, they're not Negroes."
Okay? Now that we heard what he said loud and clear, what could be the reason why Africans will be treated differently than Negroes at that time? If we were taught that Negroes are actually the long-lost descendants of Africans. Think about that.
Okay. Hold that. This here Morgan Freeman had said. Now, this particular play here was taken done back in 2005, but it took me a long time to get the whole plug in part one because it's been edited out. They tried to cut it off and all that. But he went in two places. And so we got the whole thing together. And it took me, about 3 days to get the whole thing. It don't last, but over 3 minutes. So I want you to hold on, listen to every word that the prominent African brother Morgan Freeman had to say. Hold on a minute.
Black History Month you find ridiculous. Why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman. You're going to say, well, I know this white guy named Mike Wallace. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
Nowadays, has political correctness gone too far? Take a look at this. Hallmark's new holiday sweater ornament uses a lyric from Deck the Halls. Don we now our fun apparel. They have used the word fun to replace the word gay. Critics are calling the move homophobic. Hallmark has apologized, saying it never intended to offend anyone. Is this political correctness gone too far?
Well, doesn't Hallmark make cards?
Yeah, and ornaments.
And ornaments is the problem they got into trouble with.
Yeah, Kevin?
Great.
It doesn't deserve a comment.
It doesn't?
It's so bizarre, stupid.
What do you guys think about political correctness?
What do you think, Morgan? Is this political correctness gone too far?
Yeah. I mean, we have a tendency to do that anyway. I mean, you get politically correct. Stuff happens that you don't want to happen. I all of a sudden became an African. Political correctness, African American. I'm not African. I'm American. I'm not African. I'm American. I'm not African.
All right, everybody, we're back. Now, what I'm going to do now, before we go into another break, is I'm going to, and I hope you got pen and pencil handy so you can write down the title and authors of these books so you can go and verify this stuff. Now, keep in mind, before the broadcast goes over, I'm going to give you a video to go look at on YouTube. And this video lasts over a couple of hours, and you can see with your own eyes what I'm trying to tell you from start to finish. The next book that we want to tell you about right now is 500 Nations by Alvin N. Josephi Jr. 500 Nations by Alvin M. Josephi Jr. The next book is Voyage of Discovery into the South Sea and Bering Straits. next book is Heroes and Hunters of the West, 1855. Now, what is interesting to me about this list is all of these authors' information that they're putting out goes beyond 1492. So, if we have access to all of these authors and books and works and stuff, and we have examined what these people are saying, because a lot of these people are explorers, and what they are doing is telling you exactly what they seen with their own eyes when they came to this continent long before 1492. Now, the works that they have is published later on. And remember, I told you about the Manifest Destiny. Once that was put in place, their marker was 1492 in Christopher Columbus, because from that point, they can justify all of the, so they thought, all the murders, the killings, the destruction of the temples, the destruction of the buildings and artifacts, destruction of what the state of Florida really looked like in real life. See, I live in Florida. Florida encompasses Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. All that was Florida. Now, you're going to see, and I'm going to give you this information at the end of the broadcast so you can go check it out for yourself, but I don't want you to go nowhere right now because we're not through. I want to see some more stuff. However, another book is Heroes and Hunters of the West, 1855. Then we have The American Indian by Elijah M. Haynes, 1888. And keep in mind, just like I told you, anybody that came up with anything, and especially if they had been funded by the United States corporation, was cut off. If they brought anything out to say, well, the information that y'all put out about 1492 and civilizations in history involving so-called Negro in America beginning in 1492, because the only reason he's here is because he came from a place called Africa. We discovered that it ain't matching, is already here. It's cut off. And if you keep it up, they'll kill him. See, you have pyramids all over the Americas. The Great Pyramid in ancient Egypt is without a doubt a great artifact, a great artifice. However, when you start getting a hold to the truth and you start going down into Mexico and South America and the Grand Canyon, Louisiana, Kentucky, and all these places, this stuff is cut off to you. You are not supposed to know it. It's not being taught in any grade school, college, or university inside the United States. When you bring it up, you ostracize. You actually put out the school because this stuff is being cut off. You are not supposed to know this because it interferes with the manifest destiny. So we're gonna get down into that, and but right now, let me go on to my next point here, and I'm gonna get the next short thing that I can do, and we're gonna deal with Negro man. So y'all hold on a minute. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Real Black Conscious Forum Podcast. This is Big BJ checking in. Today's conversation.
Nope. We ain't gonna go there. We're gonna go here.
You support reparations for black people?
Well, listen. Again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination, segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right? Right?
Your poll numbers with African Americans were quite low, and you also don't support reparations for slave descendants. Why do you think your poll numbers are low, and why don't you support reparations?
I think what we have got to do is pay attention to distressed communities, black communities, Latino communities, and white communities all over this country. And as president, I pledge to do that.
Why not support reparations?
Well, what do you mean by reparations?
By reparations for slave defendants.
I know, but what does that mean exactly?
Money.
Well, I think that right now our job is to address the crises facing the American people and our communities. And I think there are better ways to do that than just writing out a check.
Well, Georgetown sociology professor Michael Eric Dyson has a solution to white privilege. He says white Americans ought to create individual reparations accounts to compensate black Americans for centuries of oppression. Professor Dyson joins us now to explain how that would work and why. Professor, great to see you.
Good to see you, my friend.
So how would this work and why?
Well, yeah. Well, it's in the context, let me just briefly say, it's in the context of a much broader discussion about white privilege, white innocence, white American identity, and it's much more complicated than that, and I go at African American culture's contradictions as well. And then in the end, when I'm making suggestions about what can be done, many white people approach me and ask me, what can I do? Not in terms of the broad social transformation out there in the world. We all believe in that or argue about it, redistribution of resources or not. But when people ask me, what can I as an individual do, one of the things I suggested, besides being educated, besides participating with other African American and Latino and other brothers and sisters in social movement, is to do something called an individual repair of inequality. And if they feel inclined to do so, this is for people who are so inclined to seek out a way to compensate individually for what they think is a systemic injustice. So I talked about
buying kids computers, being able to take kids to school, to tutor them, to be able to do individual things that are tailored to their desires and aspirations, such as becoming professionals, exposing them to things they wouldn't ordinarily see. So in other words, it's a kind of ethic of compassion joined to a sense of conscience that motivates them to do what they're motivated to do.
Well, so I support a lot of that. I mean, I believe in charity. What I don't believe in is collective guilt. And that's why I'm confused by the phrase white privilege.
Well, white privilege doesn't suggest guilt. It suggests responsibility and accountability. The same accountability that America talks to about people pulling up themselves by their bootstraps and addressing their situations, their communities as being responsible for doing what they're doing. I don't believe in collective guilt, but I do believe in collective responsibility.
Responsibility and guilt are synonyms in this case. And let me just ask, let's be specific. So, privilege. I'm privileged, and I wouldn't deny that, not because I'm white, because I have a good paying job. But you're privileged too.
Of course.
So we live near each other in a nice neighborhood. You're rich. You went to an Ivy League school, unlike me. And so you're way more privileged than most white Americans.
Well,
so why would they owe
but it's not
something?
Well, first of all, privilege is contingent upon the context in which it's defined. So individual cases could have an imbalance, that people of color could be way more privileged, as you talked about, than the average, say, white person. But remember, during Jim Crow, Jackie Robinson was more privileged than most white people in terms of having the ability to make a good living on a job, but he was still denied access to a water fountain. His kids still couldn't go to the same school. So I'm saying to you that your argument then seems to be rather vulnerable to rebuff, because it doesn't mean economic accumulation can prevent you from experiencing what are essentially racial inequalities. So the amount of money you have doesn't do that.
Yeah, and in 1955, I think that was much truer than it is now.
Well, even now, when we talk about the disparities in terms of people's achievement, a study was done by Diva Pager at Princeton University that said a black person with a college education had less of a chance to get a job than a white person who had gone to prison. So even now, I'm not talking about 50 years ago, I'm talking about this is going on right now. The disparities are very real.
Right. So if I live in eastern Kentucky and I am unemployed, why am I more privileged than you? And why am I in any way, as you put it, responsible for problems of people I've never met on the other side of the country?
Look, I mean, we know that larger forces provide people opportunities or disadvantages. When you come, many people say, let me even stretch it even further. Some people say, look, I came to this country 20 years ago. I came to this country 30 years ago. I wasn't advantaged directly by the system of enslavement that prevailed in America. But if you come to this country as an immigrant and you're a white immigrant and you inherit certain privileges associated with people who are already here, that means that that privilege extends to you regardless of the fact that you indirectly benefited from it and you did not directly contribute to inequality. The Constitution was written a long time ago, so was the Declaration of Independence. But those ancient documents continue to inform people's lives and shape their aspirations.
So let me flip it around. And let me just also note there's a lot of hostility in what you're saying. And I'm sure you'll say there isn't, but obviously there is.
Not at all.
I think it's pretty clear.
It's recognition of the situation.
Okay.
It's pushback on whiteness that is usually not called out.
Clearly hostile. But leaving that aside, I'll flip around for a second. If I'm an African immigrant who comes here, I'm resettled from Somalia at public expense, high public expense, am I due these reparations too?
I think that the people who have benefited from systemic inequity in this country have been overwhelmingly white brothers and sisters, and what I'm talking about is a direct relationship to a notable and a documentable and an empirically verifiable system of inequality. There's nothing that's very obscure about that. And I'm saying to you that people of color who are here now, who have inherited that legacy as a result of their black skin and their relationship to black culture, have to be acknowledged. Well, wait, my book is not simply about reparations. You're reducing
I know that it's not, but
so much larger.
It's heavily about privilege.
That.
But let me just really we're almost out of time.
It's about white refusal to acknowledge responsibility.
If a majority white country brings in a black African at its own expense, they still owe him reparations for slavery?
No, I'm talking about the people who are here. That's an isolated event. I'm talking about the majority of African American people who are here, who are part and parcel of what this country has been, and who have built it in its institutions to become what it is now.
To watch all of my exclusive content not featured here on my channel, log on to my website at I'mJustHereToMakeYouThink.com/films. I am very thankful to see that many of you took a lot of what I stated in my last video and immediately began to research further along. Lots of you have hit my inbox in reference to what I shared about the differences between immigrants and immigrants, for example, and I am very, very pleased with those of you who knows that a 3.5-second Google search is not real research, but would be considered that way by some only if that individual is limited with expanding their leads and, of course, resource materials. So I'll share more information about it now. The 1828 Webster's English Dictionary states that the noun immigrant, spelled with the letter E, is, quote, one who removes his habitation or quits one country or region to settle in another, while the noun immigrant, spelled with an I, is, quote, a person that removes into a country for the purpose of permanent residence. Now, subscribing to the standard definition of these words makes you conclude that they both mean the same. But most of you who are cognizant of the spells of the English language would know better. Some of you would notice that the definition of immigrate with the letter E would determine that it means exit. And the definition of the word immigrate, spelled with the letter I, would determine that it means to come into, due to both Latin origins of each word. But here's the problem with that. A country is not a continent, and a continent is not a country, state, nor region of a territory. You can recall that in the first video, I shared that the definition of the word immigrant, spelled with the letter E, means people who moves from one region of a country to live in another region of that same country, which derives from its etymology, to remove from one state to another state or territory. This is not hard. Region, be it the states of the country called North America. But isn't North America a continent? Or is it really? But that's for a different time. America is being considered as both by lots of people right now, taking the advice of strangers without managing to actually look it up for themselves. Even the etymology of the word immigrate, spelled with the letter I, informs you that it means to, quote, pass into a place as a new inhabitant or resident. Listen closely. To move to a country where one is not a native for the purposes of settling permanently there. Now, does that sound peaceful to you all or something? It says for the purpose of settling permanently there as a resident and not a native of that landmass. This is why the word remove was used in Webster's definition, because there were wars going on here, and if you become a prisoner, then things get taken away from you, confiscated, prisoner of war. You may have heard me mention this multiple times already, but I know some of you newly incoming viewers might not know it yet, and that's fine. This is the reason why I share even more detailed information when I feel as though you may haven't gotten around to researching it just yet. So with all things considered, the driving principles of the ADOS agenda reveals it as, yes, another distraction. A distraction from the actual proof of whether you are an American descendant or an African descendant of slavery, or neither. Slavery did not happen the way we were all told through our compulsory educational institutions that derived directly from the Reconstruction era of the 1900s. There were political and commercial groups, businesses, and banks who were responsible for granting permission to anthropologists and the power of eugenics to create, cultivate, and influence the reconstructed history they gave to you. The narrative that you are accustomed to now stems from employees of those who wrote the manuscripts you draw from. Slavery used in its proper context is simply labor, servitude. This is why most people would commonly believe today that slavery was abolished in 1865, when it was merely upgraded and transitioned from a bondage standpoint to an industrialized version that runs parallel along the lines of capitalism. In other words, they gave you forced schooling in order to indoctrinate you with whatever it is they want you to know, in order to make you think slavery was one way, when in reality, slavery is still ongoing the exact same today as if it was in the past. Employment. There were no chains and shackles then, and there are no chains and shackles now, at least not visibly, because some of you failed to realize that the chains and shackles were placed upon your mindsets. What is the Emancipation Proclamation? Many of my viewers will recall it as the time when President Abraham Lincoln freed all of the slaves of North America. Multiple history professors and scholars would agree with you. Even some websites would state that the Emancipation Proclamation, or Proclamation 95, changed the federal legal status of more than 3.5 million enslaved African Americans in the designated areas of the South, from slave to free. However, when you actually read an original copy of Proclamation 95, you will not find any legislation throughout the context of the document where it clearly states that it was created in order to free blacks, coloreds, or African Americans from slavery. Proclamation 95 was a call to end existing public upheavals and riots that were taking place during that time period over a labor dispute. Complaints were arising from the laborers who worked long periods of hours for little to nothing nowadays, or for being promised something for their labor, but the other party didn't hold up to their end of the bargain, gradually transforming the laborers into prisoners of war, realizing that they were being used in order to create and establish the 13 colonies. In fact, the funds which were needed in order to maintain and regulate the 13 colonies were not being generated. So this forced 11 of the southern states to back out of a bad business deal, succeeding themselves from the Union. Then a new union was created, called the Confederate States of America. However, in order to keep the membership of these confederacies, they imposed limitations upon the resigning party's rights, just like any union would today. This was all done through a proclamation to blockade southern states from trading along the waterways. And by doing this, the United States government was able to stop commerce and shipments of products such as rice, corn, grain, and tobacco, just to name a few, from leaving the southern regions of the United States. When I mentioned a bad business deal earlier, this is what I was referring to. And so now you know what the Civil War was truly about. It was the civil dispute amongst employees that were tired of being treated unfairly within their place of employment. It was all about civil rights, inequality in the workplace, fights over improper land grants, tariffs, and trade disputes among settlers and squatters. All gave way to a secession of Confederate states and a broken union. In its simplest form, this was merely a labor dispute.
At the Okeechobee labor camp, while families were preparing to move north, there was still some work in the bean fields. Children, as usual, were left to fend for themselves.
Jerome, how old are you?
9.
9? Do you go to school?
Yeah.
Where do you go to school, Jerome?
I did at Okeechobee Elementary School.
I see. What is your sister's name?
Lois.
That's Lois. And what are your other sisters' names?
Catherine and Beulah.
Catherine and Beulah. What happened to your foot, Jerome?
Dig a nail in out there by the wash house.
So you drove a nail in out by the wash house. What did your mother do for that?
Put some alcohol on it.
Where do you sleep, Jerome?
In this bed.
You have this big bed?
Yeah.
What happened? How did you get that hole in that bed there, Jerome?
The rat.
The what?
Rat.
Now, Jerome, you are taking care of Kathy, of Beulah, and Lois.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to give them lunch today?
Yeah.
What are you going to feed them?
I don't know.
Do you have any food here to give them?
Yeah.
What time does your mother come home?
I don't know.
The following day, Arlene King, the mother of Jerome, Kathy, Lois, and Beulah, again was picking beans.
Aileen King, I saw your children yesterday at the Okeechobee camp. Why didn't you put them in the nursery?
I don't make enough to pay for it.
How much does it cost to put them in?
85 cents.
85 cents.
That's right.
Aileen, what time did you come out the field this morning?
6 o'clock.
What time would you get home?
About 3:30, 4 o'clock.
6 this morning to 4 o'clock this afternoon.
That's right.
How much did you earn?
$1.
$1?
That's right. $1.
Is that because the beans were of poor quality?
That's right.
Has this happened before?
That's right.
How much will your food cost you today?
About $2.
Aileen, how old are you?
29.
How many children do you have?
14.
How old were you when you first started working in the fields?
8.
You've been working 21 years in the field?
That's right.
Aileen, do you ever think you'll be able to get out of this kind of work?
No.
The Civil War was a labor dispute that was inevitably tied to American Indian lands. And for this reason, a scheme was devised where the people on the bottom will be able to create a flip-flop that resulted in their eventual rise to the top. More about this in my documentary series called African Americans Are a Big Threat to American Society. But I stated that to say this: our people were always home, even when the Industrial Revolution began. Our ancestors were the ones prospering. We owned the lands, lakes, rivers, businesses, and the banks. And most importantly, we were well aware of how and where to get the resources needed to sustain the continued growth of our success and the success of Turtle Island, aka North America. So, how does an immigrant remove an indigenous person and replace themselves as a permanent resident?
Do you realize that there was an agreement made between our people way before the people without color got here? The black people agreed that they would sacrifice and do the slavery thing for us, or we would have been completely wiped out. We owe them such a debt. Don't be caught up in American racism. They don't want us to unite and be together because they're afraid of that we'll treat them the way they treated us. We're human beings. We could never be that thoughtless, and we don't have to worry about that because from the way things look, they're going to self-destruct. A lot of them are spinning out of control. We're not even going to have to do anything. We might have to put a few of them out of their misery, but...
According to a well-known anthropologist by the name of Margaret Mead, you don't come into a place with an attitude of entitlement, because people generally enjoy when you learn their language and their culture. As long as you come into a place ready to learn and join their society, it's okay. It's very flattering for all people when someone wants to be taught. And also, Margaret Mead stated, quote, "You have to do something pretty terrible to people before they come to regard you as a spy, rather than an interested explorer." And that is exactly what they did when they adopted our ancestors' constitutions and created confederacies that reflected our ancestors' form of government. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union was a set of laws which was used to form the first U.S. government in the year 1777. This was based on the information learned by the foreigners and through Indian relations. Each Indian tribe had its own confederacy and its own constitution, and they had a commander, which was the chief. This form of government allowed for the individual sovereignty of each tribe to take place and not to be imposed upon. It also allowed for trade relations outside of the tribe to take place amongst those who are the heads or chiefs of the tribe or clan. And this is the idea that the 13 colonies took for themselves. They created the Articles of Confederation, not as colonies, but as confederacies. There was a confederacy for each state, and this is why there is also a constitution for each state. This is also why when they separated from the Union that they called themselves the Confederate States of America. The colonies of the United States created a confederacy and a union which had the duty to, quote, enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatsoever. And they used a formal setting known as Congress to resolve their disputes. Congress is defined as a formal assembly of 2 or more representatives, ambassadors, or nations that comes together to discuss problems. Sound familiar? The House of Representatives, Congress, a commander-in-chief. And because these foreign confederacies were so few in numbers alongside the large amount of Indian confederacies, they decided to form a union, which is short for trade union or labor union, that ensures they would always be together for a common purpose. In most cases, the American Indian clans or tribes allegedly agreed to sign treaties with foreigners, or rather a foreign government, to ensure peaceful cooperation between themselves, dating back to the latter part of the 1770s. This is also around the time when our own people were pitted against each other for the purposes of disloyalty and betrayal, and the colonization of our people through paper genocide. Of course, this was all politics. So, the start of the Civil War was the very first government shutdown, because it was declared a state of emergency, whereas the commander-in-chief takes supreme authority and decides what could possibly settle the dispute and get everyone working together again. All of this leads back to the Emancipation Proclamation, and according to the original documents, which is listed in an exhibit for the National Archives, it reads that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then thenceforward and forever free. It also states that, and I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from all violence unless in necessary self-defense, and I recommend to them that in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. Which truly lets you know that slavery, as we were all taught in school, is royally incorrect, because you can't let a slave know what slavery was all about. Then that person will realize that he or she may still be a slave now. I'm just here to make you think.
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, what I want to do is we're down to an hour and 20 minutes into the broadcast. I'm going to give you the title of the video so that you can go over there and see for yourself and make sure that when you get over there and you start looking at the video that I'm going to tell you about, make sure you got paper and pencil handy so you can write down what is been told in the books. Now, the list of books that I gave you is going to appear there. However, there's much more that's there, and I ran out of room on the paper. So, and I ain't feeling right anymore. Why don't I just give them the videos? The title of the video is Pre-Columbus Black Nations of America. One more time. Pre-Columbus Black Nations of America. And it was put out by a young man from South America called Kudumayu. That's what he called himself. I know how he did that. Kurimeo. Kurimeo. And the last name is Ahau. Ahau. Kudumayu. But anyway, I'm going to give you that, and then I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, then we're going to go on into the broadcast and going on down to the close. So y'all hold your hat for a minute. We'll be right back, all right? All right, everybody, we're back, and I'm gonna do this little quick play right here. And when we come back I got something to tell you, but just hold on.
Welcome back to another episode of Because It Matters. I'm your host, Digital Debbie. Happy Black History Month, everybody. And this month we will be talking about the neglected topics of our beautiful history. Today's topic, we will be talking about the American Aborigines. There were tribes that were already here. And unfortunately, most people still believe that all blacks came from the ships from Africa. So let's talk about some of those statistics. According to PBS.org, only 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped from Africa, but only 10.7 million actually survived. And of that 10.7 million, 388,000 came to North America. And the rest were distributed to South America and the Caribbean. But the first people that were here were the American Aborigines. According to indigenousandamericans.com, the American Aborigines owned 1 million square miles worth of land in the Louisiana Territory, southeastern region of Florida, and the colony of California. In many areas of America, black nations existed way before Christopher Columbus even arrived. Those lands were rightfully the American Aborigines before they were stolen and given to the white settlers. The American Aborigines that were stripped from their land were dumped in Oklahoma. And one of the most historic and sad tragedies was called the Trail of Tears. 40 to 90 Indians were placed there. The point is that the American Aborigines were here, and they were here first. Don't forget to follow Dane Calloway on his YouTube videos on his outstanding and immaculate African American history. If you have any African American history ideas or episodes, questions, or concerns, don't forget to email me at debbie@avistaproducts.com. Thank you for watching another episode of Because It Matters. I'm Digital Debbie, and I'll see you next week.
All right, everybody, we're back. Now, one thing I want to say here tonight is what we don't want to do is we don't want to get stuck. We don't want to get stuck on something to say, hey, that's it, that's the position of, I believe this, I believe that I'm going to only get information from that which I believe in. What we want to do is we want to do our own personal investigation. Okay, when you do that, gather facts. Now, once you gather the facts, go ahead and attach or do an investigation on the truth that support your facts, and then you take that arrow and put it in your quiver. Okay? Now we are faced with controlling the narratives. Now, this is when the fight gonna start. The people realize, okay, I ain't done no research like he done. I don't have the materials that he has. And so what I got to do is I got to make sure that he doesn't come out with what I know will surely destroy the little bit of junk that I have and I'm able to put on the table. So what we have to do is don't worry about that. We don't want to press anybody. It ain't about us arguing with you or debating with you or any of that stuff. because in my personal opinion, the first person that you're going to have to love is yourself. Then you're going to have the responsibility for yourself. Now, and you're divided, and after that, then we're going to have to start looking at what can we do to enhance society in this world. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to be heavily armed. And what I mean by that, you have to have some sense. You can't accomplish what I'm talking about, stupid and stuff. What you're going to have to do is actually engage in the big threes: reading, writing, and arithmetic. That alone. We ain't talking about going out and using your imagination about being on Mars somewhere, believing in the devil somewhere that you've never seen and you've never met. We're talking about actually doing the research, coming to a conclusion, and attaching the truth to it. Now, y'all hold on a minute. We'll be right back. Hold on.
Dane Calloway says 98% of all people who we call African American are in fact natives and had their origin here.
And Columbus himself sent at least 3,000 and possibly as many as 6,000 or more Native American slaves to Europe. This begins as early as 1493. On his return voyage, he takes about 24 Native Americans to Portugal and Spain. In the subsequent voyages, many, many more are sent, men and women. Now, he intends to sell them by the thousands, not only in Spain, but he mentions the Azores, the Canary Islands, the Cape Verde Islands off, the west coast of Africa, as well as in Portugal and Spain and elsewhere. So even before there are any appreciable number of African slaves being sent to the Americas, there are Native American slaves being sent to Europe, principally probably ending up in Lisbon and Seville or Sevilla in southern Spain, but also being transshipped to Valencia and many other cities. Now, at the same time that that's happening, there are large numbers of African slaves being sent northward to the same cities.
One of the things that Dane Calloway says, and others, is that we are not Africans, right? Right. In fact, he even says, if you prove that you are an African, I will go away. Well, Dane, after this video, you have to go away. Because I think people assume that Jabari hasn't done that research. The reality is I didn't need to do the research. More on that in a minute. So first of all, I'm going to just show you the most recent test that I did with Ancestry.com. With you. Come close and take a look at the images. I was amazed when I saw this today.
5,000 people or something, and she announced that she just had the test and that she was Zulu. So it broke on CNN. I was sitting in my living room minding my own business and said, Oprah Winfrey's a Zulu. So I called Rick Kittles, and I said, Rick, did you tell Oprah she was a Zulu? He goes, no, man, she made that up herself. It's a true story. It's a true story. I would lie to make you laugh, but I'm telling you a true story. So I said, Rick, are you in your lab? He said, yeah. I said, is anybody there? He said, no. I said, when the results come in, make her Zulu, man. I said, you back there making it up anyway. Nobody believe you can take some spit and figure out a tribe? What, are you crazy?
One of the things that I also see that Aboriginals use is this book. It's called Africans and Native Americans. And they try to argue that this is how they can tell that Africans actually are Native Americans. So I even have to open the book. I'm not going to say their names. Several Aboriginals. Not Dane Calloway. You know who recently told me about this book and said I'm not familiar with it? I didn't talk to him. Who? This was Lex Vortex said. I know he's not familiar with this. Lex, I don't think you knew that I had the book. I don't know if you know who you're talking to.
So is it a good book?
There's some interesting stuff in it. But I want to read something to you, okay? Because first off, I don't even know if I need to crack it open, because you should understand that obviously if it's called Africans and Native Americans, they're acknowledging that there are Africans and there are Native Americans.
There you go.
What is wrong with you? Now, he does explain that there's some confusion sometimes, and that Native Americans get called Africans sometimes, and that Native Americans get called Africans sometimes.
And that Native Americans get called Africans sometimes.
He does say that, but he doesn't claim. He doesn't claim that Africans don't come from Africa. He does say that there's some blurring of lines. We're not talking about 12 million Africans. We're talking about 12 million Africans.
We're talking about 12 million Africans.
I'm going to get on another website that these self-proclaimed scholars love to use. Oh, everybody came from Africa. It was 12.5 million. Let me jump onto this website right here. The Transatlantic Slave Trade Database Voyages. This is called the slavevoyages.org. Now, this is where they show you where these quote-unquote slaves, mind you, they're not telling you if they, what their origin is, nothing. They just telling you slaves. Here go the numbers. Oh, they coming from Spain, Brazil, the Netherlands, the USA, France, and here's the disembark and embark. Where they were picked up and dropped off at. Keep in mind, I keep telling you there's a difference between truth and fact. A lot of those scholars, self-proclaimed scholars, would believe that this is a fact because somebody created a website now. Oh, and they threw some numbers out there. Oh, and they threw some numbers out there. Where they get this information from? Number one, where they get it from? Okay? And how come they not breaking it down to you? I mean, you can tell me the numbers all day long. How come we can't know if that's white or black people, so-called black people? So wait a minute, you could be telling me, and these are white slaves right now. You could be telling me slaves, and they could be white slaves. Do you hear me? You just telling me numbers in between a particular timeline of the 1500s all the way to what? 1875. But the U.S. Census started in the 1790s. But you got records of these numbers since the 1500s. Somebody lying. Let me tell you how they lying. When you use this website, you click on the about the project. Once you click on the About Project, you click on the history of the project so you can know what's going on, where they get this stuff from, right? This is what they tell you on top of that. This is what they tell you. Now, before they tell you 1770 this and 1500 that, they tell you right in the beginning where I highlight from the, I'm going to read this now, from the late, listen to this, y'all, from the late 1960s. Herbert Klein, and I'm going to go into Herbert Klein, probably in a documentary. I got to. You got to understand who that guy is. It's the reason why they're pinpointing these people out inside of this history of the project, and Herbert Klein was the first one mentioned for a very, very particular reason. I might even tap into it a little bit here, but I'm definitely going to have to come out with a documentary about this guy. Herbert Klein and this guy. Herbert Klein and other scholars began to collect, listen to this, archival data on slave trading voyages from unpublished sources and to code them into a machine-readable format. In the 1970s and 1980s, scholars created a number of slave ship databases, several of which the current authors choose to recode from the primary sources rather than integrate the databases of those scholars into the present set. In other words, they say, you know what, we can make up our own. Let's just do this the way we want to do it. Let's do, and they put it into a system. Here it is. Now here's the kicker. By the late 1980s, now here's the kicker. By the late 1980s, there were records of approximately 11,000 individual transatlantic voyages in 16 separate databases. Listen to this, not all of which were transatlantic, nor, as it turned out, slave voyages. Boom! So what are they? Made up, created databases. You have no record of the transatlantic slave trade. They told you that. Not all of which were transatlantic, nor, as it turned out, slave voyages. So you created a story. Melville Herskovich created the Middle Passage. Then the rest of these Jews, the Jesuits, got together in the University. Then the rest of these Jews, the Jesuits, got together in the University of Chicago and created an idea that they learned from Frank Boas, the professor at the University of Chicago. Okay, in which Melville Herskovich started teaching all of our people, especially those that were in the Boule in the University of Northwestern, still in Chicago, the same out of Africa theory. Now debunk this. It's right here in front of you. I'm reading it right off of that site. Debunk it. I dare you. You can't.
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, let me tell you a story that happened to me down here. I'm down here in Jacksonville, Florida. We missed the bulk of the hurricane, went around us, tore up down south. But I was invited down to Daytona to a college graduation down there. And it was all going good because the young man that's going to be graduating, boy, he's sharp as a whip. But when I got almost down there, me and young, I was traveling Red, which is a graduate from college. She told me, well, he's in the Greek sorority that he's in. They do good. I said, whoa. I say he's in a what? And so that bothered me, but I'm on my way. I got to get down in there. I got to see this thing and all that right there, but she told me he's in a Greek sorority. I'm trying to figure out, man, I had a hard time. But nevertheless, why do immigrants get reparations? Why? And this is part of you owning your own college curriculum, because once you do that, what we're hearing here tonight, all of this stuff is in the archives of the curriculum, the college. And I created that because I want to make it possible for everybody who's looking at it to actually go to the Philippines and not only just look at what television shows you about the Philippines, but where in the Philippines are people that look like you. Where in Argentina, people that look like you. Where in Brazil are the people who look like you. Where in China are the people that look like you. Where in Japan are the people that look like you. Where and on and on and on. Oh, that's part of it. We deal with land, air, and sea. But right now, why immigrants get reparations? Y'all hold on a minute. We'll be right back.
To watch all of my exclusive content not featured here on my channel, log on to my website at imjustheretomakeyoutthink.com/films. Society of America, the descendants of so-called American slaves have been advocating for reparations from the government ever since the tail end of the Civil War in 1865. But the government chose to ignore their demands as if they hold no validity, when publicly verifiable evidence proves it to be true. One example is Union Major General William Sherman issuing Special Field Order Number 15 on January 16, 1865, which ordered that land confiscated from Confederate state landowners be divided up into 40-acre portions and then distributed to newly emancipated Negro families, similar to how the government assisted incoming foreigners from other continents of the world ever since the 1840s. But this order was immediately eradicated once President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on April 14, 1865, and Andrew Johnson was then elevated as the new U.S. president. Then all of that land was given to foreigners from other parts of the world instead, that just so happened to be welcomed here as immigrants in America that were hoping to ultimately undergo the process of gaining citizenship status with the federal government by way of being employed and obeying all government national laws, bills, statutes, and contracts. Now, this issue was brought to the attention of Congress ever since by numerous men and women who knew that they were entitled to their lands and demanded that pensions should also be included for their successful works, which was literally creating, building, and cultivating America from the ground up into what it is today. And that's not an exaggeration. Year after year, this issue was brushed to the side by the government, and each presidential administration that moves into the White House continuously ignores it, whether Democrat or Republican. In the year 1989, which was 124 years after Special Field Order Number 15 was issued, Representative John Conyers introduced a bill labeled H.R. 40. And if this bill was passed, it would only allow for the creation of a study commission to study slavery and discrimination in the United States, and then study potential reparation proposals for restitution. And just this bill alone is being ignored. Yep, a study into the issues surrounding the aftermath of early unjust labor in the United States is being ignored still to this very day by the government. This indicates that the government does not care about biting the hands that fed them historically. But when it comes to foreigners or immigrants seeking asylum in the U.S., the government then jumps to their every need. And we are still seeing examples of this form of favoritism displayed by the government today. For example, just this past October of 2021, Joe Biden's administration, the Justice Department, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Homeland Security were reportedly planning to give $450,000 to each adult and child of immigrant families who were separated at the border under the Trump administration. According to reports from the Wall Street Journal, the payments would be made to settle lawsuits brought by the American Civil Liberties Union, representing those families, in which they were originally asking for $3.4 million per family, but Biden's administration countered with a $450,000 per person payout. Attorney for the ACLU said in a statement that, quote, "The Biden administration is correct to provide relief to the children and families affected by the government's horrific practice of family separation. The suffering is something they will always live with, and it is a deep moral stain on our country. We need to make it right. And this includes not simply any monetary support, but also a path to remain here. This is what is right and fair." End quote. Now, keep in mind that the Republicans are obviously against this payout. However, they are only advocating for the payout's amount to be adjusted due to the possibility of the payout's current amount attracting more immigrants and accelerating their plans to cross the border. But either way you put it, the government is literally giving reparations to immigrants and has been doing so ever since immigrants have been crossing the border seeking asylum, no matter their skin complexion. I mean, to the point where they're even exempt from standard immigration policies still today, as long as they use the code phrase, "I am here seeking asylum." The University of Texas at Austin Department of History states, quote, as early as 1917, immigration law had exempted asylum seekers from general immigration restrictions, end quote. So can you blame them for migrating here? Absolutely not. Because who wouldn't want to live in the best countries in the world where their needs are immediately met with the opportunity to empower themselves and their families for years to come by gaining federally allotted lands to farm and feed their families and be gracefully compensated for even migrating here to begin with? And let's not forget how you'll be labeled as white by the U.S. Census, no matter your skin complexion, so that you may enjoy the privileges, civil rights, and all the other benefits granted by way of the government, but from the fruits of the indigenous people's labors, who wants this government to do more than just act as if they are attempting to create a study commission to study the effects of what really happened here during America's founding. So is this capitalism, prejudice, racism, and favoritism all wrapped up in one? Or is it just the government ignoring the blacks?
You make kind of a provocative comment in your book here, Mug, and I think it's on page 151. You write that various groups, feminists, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the black civil rights experience. Yes. What do you mean by that?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that because I think it's one of the most important points of the book. I mean, I think the way liberals have treated blacks like children and many of their policies have been harmful to blacks. At least they got the beneficiary group right. We do have to, I mean, we shouldn't. There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortions, but that's, or gays who want to get married to one another. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left. They dropped the blacks after 5 minutes.
Immigrant rights are not civil rights?
No, I think civil rights are for blacks.
See, this is essentially the problem, and the Republicans don't understand.
What have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country.
But you see, most of us are either immigrants or are the descendants of immigrants, and we understand that not everybody, there are Native Americans in, but we understand in this country,
People must understand why it is essential to disassociate themselves with politically correct words like, for example, black and white, as their means of description when labeling themselves as a group of people by skin tone. Because in physics, the correspondence of color to a specific wavelength is called spectral color. Black and white, in this sense, are both absent of color, because while black absorbs the light, white refracts it, meaning that they both do not carry specific wavelengths, even though in the visual arts field they are occasionally defined as colors, but only by common public opinion. So when the U.S. Census labels citizens as black or white as their classifications of race, it is not done so under a descriptive means by way of a person's physical skin hue. It strictly serves as a social construct, which is the meaning, notion, or connotation placed upon a specific group of people by an entire society and then later adopted by that same specific group of people with respect to how the other people of that entire society views or deals with that specific group of people. In other words, a social construct is a title or name that was given to our people by strangers, and then eventually our people adopted it as their own. And that's a big no-no, because what if the government isn't responding to our demands for reparations or restitution only because we are agreeing to being labeled as something we are not, but that they want us to be? I mean, think about it. Doesn't that count as making yourselves non-existent when referring to yourself as black, since black can't be seen anyway? But what we can see is thousands of our people complaining about a white privilege that particular people are in fact receiving from the government. And we didn't think about calling ourselves for who we really are as the fix to this discrimination yet? Would you believe that there are foreigners from other places of the world, regardless of their skin complexions, gaining this white status or white privilege immediately upon arriving here in America as undocumented immigrants, and that's before they even become legalized U.S. citizens and then labeled as white on the U.S. Census? Like, did you ever wonder when did the Caucasian race become legalized first-class citizens of America, since they too carry a history of immigrating to America as foreigners from other places of the world? And as more immigrants arrived here in America, the government continued to assist those newcomers by modifying their pre-existing immigration laws. This is called immigration reform, which is merely a change to the current immigration policy of a country, city, or state by granting easier pathways for foreigners to become U.S. citizens. Like by way of payment, for example, when some presidents will drop the cost down or raise the cost up for illegal immigrants to become legal citizens. Another example is during the Bush and Obama administrations, legislation was crafted that tightened up border security, but also proposed a way for people who did not have legal status to earn legal permanent residency, which an immigrant must have before trying to become a citizen. Another example is comedian Michael Blackson, publicly celebrating on social media that he officially became a U.S. citizen on November 24th, 2021. The 48-year-old Ghana native posted a photo on Instagram to his 5 million followers, waving a small U.S. flag with the caption reading, quote, "They finally made me an American citizen. Only foreigners will understand why I'm smiling and what we go through to get a green card or citizenship." He also posted his green card on his Twitter account, being sure to block out his classification of race from being shown, leaving the comment, "Today I'm turning this in back to the U.S. immigration. For those who don't know what this is, it's a green card. This is what every foreigner that comes to America would die for. Laugh out loud. Today I'm turning it in for my citizenship. Can't wait to swear in so I can apply for welfare." Now, even though he may seem like he was joking right there, that's actually true in millions of cases for foreigners who are allowed to become citizens and are classified as white, which I just covered earlier in this segment. Now, what's very important to note here is that an August 2021 article written by Justice for Immigrants states that, quote, "An estimated 10.5 million undocumented immigrants live in the United States and could be deported because of their lack of legal status. That number has declined since 2014. Approximately 2/3 have lived in the United States for more than a decade. These individuals and their families participate in the workforce and contribute to their communities." But wait a minute. So if the Border Patrol is there to prevent immigrants from illegally entering the United States, then are these 10.5 million immigrants an exception to the rules of this government? This just goes to show you that they are allowing them here and are in fact assisting them in more ways than just one. Why else would foreigners want to migrate from their mother country so badly and into this one without receiving some form of compensation for doing so? On the official website of the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on the topic of immigration reform, she states, quote, "Our nation's immigrants are the constant reinvigoration of America. Each wave of newcomers brings their patriotism, bravery, and determination to succeed to our shores, and in doing so makes America more American. As students and service members, entrepreneurs, and public servants, parents, and neighbors, these new Americans affirm our country's fundamental founding truth, that in diversity lies strength. We will never stop fighting to ensure that America remains a land of opportunity for those who work hard, abide by our laws, and dare to dream." End quote. These people are not seeking asylum or running from something or somebody or whatever story that your local and national news media station will create just to make the viewers feel guilty. According to their actions historically, the government's intention of allowing immigrants into this country is not that complicated. A few reasons is about manipulating the U.S. Census numbers and recruiting useful foreigners into the U.S. military. For example, in an article created by Adebayo Adeleke of the Dallas Morning News, dated September 23, 2021, titled "The U.S. Military Needs More Immigrant Recruits," states, quote, "When Afghanistan fell to the Taliban last month, my heart broke. As a former military officer, I had traveled to the country many times, commanding troops on the ground and helping to build roads and bridges. The Afghan allies who worked alongside American soldiers deserved better. Their lives are now in grave danger. To abandon them now is un-American. Welcoming these allies and their families can also strengthen our country in the years to come. I know this because it is my story. I came to America from Nigeria in 1996. I spent 2 decades in the U.S. Army, leading troops and shepherding supplies across borders, before launching a supply chain consulting business in Dallas. Today, I am a successful entrepreneur and effective manager to both veteran and immigrant employees. Refugees are more likely to start businesses than American-born citizens. Listen, refugees are more likely to start businesses than American-born citizens. They have higher retention rates, and after 25 years in the country, they have higher median incomes than the American average, according to New American Economy. End quote. So, with all of that being said, is this government even for the original indigenous people that built this country? Or is this government only for the other people that they allow into this country?
Okay, everybody.
I'm just here to make you think.
Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, what I'm going to do is take a little quick break, and we'll be right back. Y'all hold on a minute. We will be back.
Log on to patreon.com/Dane Calloway or paypal.me/Dane Calloway to support me, my channel, and my content.
By demand, merchandise is now available at I'mJustHereToMakeYouThink.com.
My word to all black Americans, one thing I would like to say, let's not be deceived. Look at the record. Look at the promises that have been made over the past from the Democratic Party.
On this day, that is also the bicentennial of Charles Darwin's birth. It's worth a moment to pause and renew that commitment to science and innovation and discovery that Lincoln understood so well.
So let's jump right into the next question. And it's so if we shouldn't call ourselves African Americans or black, then what should we call ourselves? And that is a very good question. All right, now if you take a look at my previous documentaries, I explained or shared rather detailed information as to the reason why you should not call yourself nor associate yourself with those dangerous terms. You are indigenous. You are indigenous to this land, not anywhere else. this land, Turtle Island, now known as North America.
Let's keep switching the identity to hide the people. Why don't we just keep renaming you? Are you Negro? Oh, no, you're not Negro. No, you're colored. No, you're not colored. You're African American. And this is what they name you. The slavers name you this. Because I know a white guy who grew up in South Africa, and he now lives in America. He is an African American, and more African American than most. Do you see how African American is a misnomer? It's a misnomer. Don't check that box. It's a title given to blacks by democratic slaves.
Now, in today's society of America, millions of so-called African Americans are struggling to come to grips with their true identity, culture, heritage, and history, mainly due to the numerous manipulative tactics utilized to govern their critical thinking mechanisms and to also decimate their literacy capabilities. Each one of these manipulative social engineering experiments can only be detected and detached from one's subconscious when standing outside of the box. I'll let you ponder on what's happening to those that are still inside of it. Meanwhile, you have not and will not ever hear me promote any form of religion throughout any of my content that I present to the public. Reason being is due to religion, faith, and beliefs are based on one's personal relationships. And I am not here to debate nor argue about who you should or should not love. That's simply none of my business. So let's also be sure not to confuse the truth that I present throughout my content with any personal beliefs that you may have. Now in this segment, you will learn about who you truly are and where you really came from based on truthful information. Because mind you, there is a big difference between truth and facts. Facts is merely controversial information, whereas a person bears the opinion to debate its credibility or not. That's yet another form of belief, whereas truth is non-debatable due to its credibility of always making logical sense. This is why in today's society, most people don't even care about the truth. Why? Because to them, unfortunately, a lie is more entertaining. Now, on March 1st, 1790, then President George Washington and Vice President John Adams, along with then Speaker of the House Frederick Muhlenberg, signed the 1790 Census Act. According to the census itself, it states that the 1790 Census Act is a law that, quote, required that every household be visited, that completed census schedules be posted in two of the most public places within each jurisdiction, there to remain for the inspection of all concerned, and that the aggregated amount of each description of persons for every district be transmitted to the President. So let me point out that some households, not all, were visited by these individuals entitled as census enumerators, also known as census takers, who are technically federally government unsupervised employees who allegedly went from town to town, city to city, and door to door, deciding who was of what race, and then documented the families they meet as such. So you mean to tell me that these census takers were provided instructions by way of the government to document and record the ethnic category of various family members based on their perception of the family when they visited, and their opinions were considered to be official historical records of information? Even though they did not count every individual living within the United States due to the multiple indigenous Niji raids and rebellions occurring during this time period, the alleged first official census of the entire United States was implemented on a day dubbed as Census Day on August 2nd, 1790. See, now what's very important to note here is that the quote, free people of color were recorded all in one group. And also note that it states free and not freed, as if they were freed people from some form of enslavement. I go into full details regarding this topic at hand in my documentary called The Untold Truth about the classifications of race for African Americans. But of course I mentioned all of this for a particular reason, and that is the official 1790 U.S. Census population count was a total of 3,929,214 people. But keep in mind that this total amount did not reflect millions of people who were indigenous to North America, meaning they did not come from another continent, nor did it reflect the accurate total amount of so-called slaves in North America. Why? Well, the U.S. Census Agency themselves admitted to not possessing the majority of their official historical records of information that was allegedly documented between the 1790 U.S. Census and up to the 1830 U.S. Census. Their excuse was to claim that these records were lost or destroyed somehow. See, this was purposely done for two reasons. A, to hide the truth about the real history surrounding the U.S. in slavery. I mean, generally speaking, you can literally prove to yourself that your ancestors were slaves or not by documentation. You can check and see if your ancestors came off a boat. I have been sharing this information publicly for a few years now, along with my sources, and I still have not heard from anyone that used my directions to trace their family that I have listed in the description of this video, that one of their ancestors were documented as being a former slave. The people that reached out to me that has or is currently undergoing research on their family's genealogical background have not failed with discovering that their family members were either never enslaved and has always been free, or worked as an indigent servant for money, land ownership, business ownership, etc., and considered to be freedmen once their obligations of servitude expired. Make no mistake, when you hear the word freedman from now on, freedman does not necessarily mean that he or she was freed from enslavement, because it can also mean relieved from their duties in most commonly known cases. So, this first reason to allegedly lose or destroy these records were to hide the truth that it was a very small amount of copper-colored slaves and a greater amount of prisoners of war in North America. And the second reason is, B, to hide the truth about who are the real minority and majority in terms of the population count here in the United States of America. Which brings me to my very next point. If you are still watching, congratulations. You are now about to be made cognizant of one of the biggest reasons why I'm just here to make you think. Listen closely. The biggest portion of their hidden agenda was the abominable sabotaging of indigenous people's history, legacy, languages, culture, heritage, systematically. Of course they couldn't pull this task off on their own, so they implemented a methodology format based solely on the scientific concepts of eugenics. According to the National Archives, the term eugenics was coined by a British natural scientist and explorer named Francis Galton in the year of 1883. Now, there are two sides to every coin, so I'll flip each side over to uncover its hidden agendas. And by the way, I'm not theoretically speaking. Eugenics was implemented to help improve one selected group of people and their future generations to come, to overtake and oversee yet another set group of people and their future generations by way of extermination of their mindsets only. This rabbit hole goes much deeper than one may assume. Allow me to simplify the explanation of this paramount method utilized by the likes of our governmental industrialized institutions throughout America still to this very day. Eugenics literally changes everything that any person was ever taught of or even thought of previously before this selection was carried out upon him or her. Now, according to Francis Galton, this system would allow, quote, more suitable races or strains of blood a better chance of prevailing speedily over the less suitable, end quote. Galton was heavily influenced by the likes of an English naturalist, biologist, and the first ever self-proclaimed documented bigoted genealogist, famously known by the name of Charles Darwin. Darwin single-handedly developed the controversial theory surrounding human specimen and the system of natural selection. And of course, Darwin did so with racial motives and derogative intentions. During the early 1900s, the social engineering aspect of Darwin's theory became popular worldwide amongst many scientists alike, high-ranking politicians, and it even caught the eye of the elitists, the most powerful globalists to ever exist in modern times. More about this in the second installment concerning this topic, but I mention all of this to inform you that they all played a prominent role in elevating the advancement of eugenics, specifically for the sake of their own race, disguised as if this was for the benefit of all humanity at a cost of whatever they desire. They were religiously following this formula or rule by dubbing it as, quote, survival of the fittest. In other words, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution was merely a way to elevate and escalate the implementation of white supremacy and to eradicate those who were of non-pale complexions, deeming it as survival of the fittest, where those who did not meet their racist criterias, motives, and agendas would suffer from a variety of forms of propaganda that was hypothesized to eliminate the opposing race of people. See, eugenics is literally a modernized pseudoscience that is based merely on racial discrimination and environmental injustice socially, physically, and mentally, but became prosperous still due to its popularity of praises from those who gravitated towards inequality and racial estrangement. Now, with all of that being said, I'm going to use the title of an article that I created back in 2016 that went viral and accumulated 7 million views in 2 months. And nearly every website known to man was copying and pasting my article on their website for views and of course ad revenue. And the title is 98% of African Americans are in fact native Indians and are owed millions. Now, you might be saying, well, Dane, what about the other 2%? The other 2% will be the very, very small amount of Africans. Now, of course, I'm about to give you truthful information about this before it somehow disappears from the internet, because this rabbit hole is in fact much deeper than one may assume. Listen closely. On the date of September 25th, 2008, in a statement made before the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs by Representative James P. Morin, on the grounds of the Thomasina E. Jordan Indian Tribes of Virginia Federal Recognition Act, Morin stated, quote, "This is a travesty this committee can correct. The second unique circumstance for Virginia tribes is what they experienced at the hands of the state government during the first half of the 20th century. It has been called a paper genocide. At a time when the federal government granted Native Americans the right to vote, Virginia's elected officials adopted racially hostile laws targeted at those classes of people who did not fit into the dominant white society. The fact that some of Virginia's ruling elite claimed to be blood descendants of Pocahontas in their view meant that no one else in Virginia could make a claim they were Native American and a descendant of Pocahontas' people. With the great hypocrisy, Virginia's ruling elite pushed policies that culminated with the enactment of the Racial Integrity Act of 1924. This act directed state officials and zealots like Walter Pleckler to destroy state and local courthouse records and reclassify in Orwellian fashion all non-whites as colored. It targeted Native Americans with a vengeance, denying Native Americans in Virginia their identity. To call yourself a Native American in Virginia was to risk a jail sentence of up to 1 year. Now, in this statement, he used the term Native American. But the truth is that our identities were changed not from Native American, but from Indian to colored. And they were not only jailing people in Virginia for claiming their true identity, they were killing them by hanging them from a tree, and in more ways than just one that I won't mention, in each state across North America. The biggest bigoted racist white supremacist of them all, and that's including the federal government and all of those who praise this coward's derogative motives and agenda, was none other than Walter Ashby Pleckler.
The Plecker era was truly one of the darkest times for Native people in Virginia. But I think it's critical for us to think about what was the genesis of the ideology that Plecker was a proponent of. And it's really the eugenics movement. The eugenics movement was a pseudo-scientific movement. We say pseudo-scientific today because we find that the science that they were proposing is not what we today would honor as scientific in any way. The eugenics movement has a direct link to the descendants of Charles Darwin. They somehow made the leap to these notions about racial purity. What is best for each race is racial purity. Plecker and his friends convinced the Virginia legislature to adopt very restrictive legislation in 1924. It's called the Racial Integrity Act. With this legislation, it was decreed that there were only two possible categories. One is white, which means a person you check that you're white if you have white ancestry, Caucasian ancestry, and absolutely nothing else. The other category is everybody else, and that's colored. So this was very hard on Virginia's indigenous community because in a sense it wipes away their identity on paper. Their ability to describe themselves as Indian was not possible in the state of Virginia until 1968, when the U.S. Supreme Court forced Virginia to repeal the law.
Area code 314, you on the air.
You know who else practiced racial purity?
Who is that, Brother Bianchi?
Practically every ethnic group, especially Africans.
Okay.
You want to go back in ancient time, the Cushites practiced it. You know how
All
you
right.
know?
How you know?
Because those Bible passages that say don't give your daughters to their sons and your sons to their daughters.
We certainly did, but now you know Dr. Walter Williams told you to throw your Bible away.
I ain't talking about no Bible. I'm talking about history. Cushites with a K, not a C.
Okay.
Cushites were the ones who sat on the throne of those dynasties.
Okay.
When you hear somebody say Amenhotep, it means that their godhead is Amen.
All
and
right.
the Cushites' godhead was Amen.
Okay.
Hatshepsut, and I could name her throne name. It's there on the wall of her temple, there in the West Bank. As you go up them 42 steps, there to the right, before you go up the steps, is a story of her reign.
Okay.
It talks about her sending an expedition to Punt to bring back some things, including the little Trois. But it also talks about Amen. Amen was tired of mixed marriages, and he wanted a pure solar child. So he immaculately impregnated her mother to thus produce her.
Okay.
It's practiced today in West Africa.
Well, let me ask you this right here. Based on the information that we have come up with now, you're absolutely correct, but you know everything had to come from somewhere. We are finding is the same identical things that you are telling us is being found in the tombs and caves and monuments and stuff inside the Americas. And what I be trying to tell people is when you talk about Egypt, Egypt is like a mirror. It's on both sides of the planet, in North Africa and also in the Americas, all over the United States, all down South America, Mexico, and every doggone where else. So my position is based on what we have found and based on the investigation that we're doing and currently doing right now. Because down here we got hurricanes churning up stuff, and they finding stuff, and this stuff been off the record. I don't think they can still maintain. Well, I know they can't maintain.
Who's finding this stuff? You got to put some names to that. Who's finding these things? People say that blacks was here before anybody else. Where are they graves at? Where are they cemeteries?
Well,
people had to die.
Well, wait a minute. I've already gave everybody this information at the top of the broadcast. But I tell you what now. This is what I got, and I already put it out. You can go right there on YouTube, and you can type in pre-Columbus, Black Nations of America.
Yeah, we know it was people here before Columbus, but they wasn't here in no organized society. You had people that wandered around all over the planet.
Well, that's what they told us. If you look at this here stuff, maybe because you cannot create these type of artifacts, these temples and tombs, and like Dr. Williams said with the Great Pyramid of Egypt, but down here, we got stuff so majestic that was long before. And if you read the documents of Hermes or Thoth, when he created the books that he did, he said we are from the West. And so I'm not debating.
They're talking about Libya.
Just checking out.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
Where is these tombs and pyramids here in the Americas? In temples.
You got them in Oklahoma.
You got my email address? Send me a location. I'm going to try to go there and see if I can find one.
All right. Well, hold on a minute.
I ain't reading no books.
All right. Shit, don't blame me. Hold on. Hold on a minute. I don't have to read. I got the library, and I created a curriculum to get around that. But give me your email address one more time.
And my email address is lcsteele@mindspring.com. You got it.
LC.
I'll send you. Lima Charlie Steele, STEEL, at mindspring.com.
EL. Okay, I need to put it down. All right. Well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to send you what I got.
Yeah, give me some. I want some locations where I can go physically and visit these places. I ain't got nothing else to do.
Shoot, I ain't got time. But I tell you what, I will sure send it to you. And the only thing I'm trying to do is unload a little bit of this curriculum that I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. But the curriculum that I think kids need to be able to do reading, writing, and arithmetic or math. They don't do that very well.
Put that out tonight. I done put it out tonight. It's already been done.
Have you had them African-centered schools? Them kids were going around talking about Habargani and Yabo and all that stuff and Hotep. They couldn't do no math.
We got for the 1 to 2 years, I created stuff where they could deal with the Americas, and we have a African thing that it got right there on YouTube. But this stuff is totally overlooked. But I had to dig it out and find it because I love that little baby. And boy, look at she ain't even 2 yet. She know how to count. She know how to spell. She know how to talk. She know it all.
Yeah. Now, you know what happened to black kids when they go to college? They can't hold. They can't hold the curriculum. They can't, even in your historical black college, which is sort of watered down, they can't even maintain it. That's why they take them 6 years to get out. And some of them drop out before that.
They ain't giving them the nourishment that they need, and the nourishment is knowledge of self.
Well, the African schools, that's all on the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor. This, black, that, everything.
It's a whole different ball game over there. But over here,
I'm talking about here I'm talking about in the United States. I can name them schools. Constantly independent black institutions. You had African schools in Detroit, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Chicago, down in New Orleans, Marcus Garvey out in L.A., Nation House in New York.
They're still being taught away from what they need to learn.
And what is it they need to learn? Yeah, all right. I might re-listen to it because you're down to 2 minutes, and I don't want you to waste your quarters.
Well, what they need to learn is everything they can possibly learn about themselves and the ancient story. That's what they need to learn.
Too, you got some black folks that's 40% white.
Well, it's okay. You gotta see, we in a melting pot. Look here, we are in a melting pot.
They need to learn about Charlemagne. They need to learn about Caesar. They need to learn about the Irish roots like Muhammad Ali did. If that's the case. Yeah.
Well,
anyway, go ahead, man. It's almost time for you to go.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and cut up a little more of my jazz, and I'm going to talk to you later. But anyway, that's Brother Bianchi, and I appreciate him coming back on. Y'all hold on a minute. Be right back.
Do